Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. How are you all this morning? Hello, 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 hello. Yes, I'm here. Pizza and Diet Pepsi. Wow, that is something I cannot have either of those things. It's like the anti-Anne lunch, Clavicus. I used to be able to eat those things. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. We have Noli. Oh, we gotta get Noli in focus. Focus on the Noli. Hello, everyone. Hello, Turgeon. Hey, I'm gonna grab my flannel real quick, guys. It's really cold in here. I just realized how cold it was when I sat down. 1 second. Yes, thank you for taking the hit, Clavicus. 1 sec. I wasn't prepared for how cold it is because it got down to the mid-40s here last night. So this actually, we don't heat the back of the house during the night, obviously, because nobody's back here. So, wow, 27 months, Nomad Zeke. Amazing. Coffee and chocolate. Yes, coffee and chocolate for Crowley. That sounds like a very hamstery food choice. The coffee part, at least. All right. So, Nolis, let's, what do you guys want to do today? Sash, leather? I think I'm going to hold off tuning the pants more until I have the sash down and the leather, and then I can tune everything. That's one mistake you can make, is attempting to tune colors before you have everything blocked in. We also still have to put dark stripes on the pants. But I kind of want to do the sash or the leather and then work on that. Do you guys have an opinion what you'd like to do? I see Crowley wants to do leather. We kind of have to decide what we want for this sash. I think we decided kind of orangey, didn't we? Orangey red, reddy orange. So then I need to go either really dark with the leather or really light with the leather. Because my red is going to at least it'll be an orangey red. And that means if I've got an orangey red on the sash, that means I cannot do it on the leather. Plus, doing an orangey red here would mean probably using ruddy leather and highlighting it up with orange. And sadly, that would put it right in the same shade of light and dark as the green. So, yeah, I kind of decided, because remember we looked at the color wheel and we realized that if we fit a triad in here, if we did a triadic scheme, here we go. So with yellow green up at the top, which is what Noli kind of is, and we look at this big triangle right here, big triangle, one of those colors is blue violet, and that's what we did with his pants. So what's the other horn? That's red orange. So that means if we want to do a triadic scheme, which this means essentially what that means is all these colors go together. So if we want to keep the triad scheme and know that all our colors go together, then the natural choice for either sash or leather is red-orange. But if we did a reddish-orange leather, like I said, it'd be the same kind of light or dark as everything else right now, and I'm trying to get away from that. Plus, I also think it makes more sense for the sash to go brighter, go more red-orange. No, Grumpy Cold Cat sounds like a bad idea. So really, we have two choices to make, two potential choices here. I already mentioned that I'm probably going with black stripes on the pants instead of white because I don't want to draw attention down here. It's hard enough to get attention up to his face right now, so because it's got that dark muzzle. So I don't want to put light stripes down here and totally pull attention away. So that means black stripes on the pants. That means going dark. I could go lighter with the sash and dark with the leather, or I can go darker with the sash and lighter with the leather. And hey, Dogfather, thank you. 22 months. Awesome. Morning, crows. And it really is, it has to go in either or. Like if you go darker with the sash, then you have to go lighter with the leather. If you go like lighter, if I go with more of a coral, like a faded out coral color with the sash, then I can go dark with the leather. If I do go dark with the leather, I'm going to want to emphasize some highlights all along the fur here for sure. Light leather is what we have from Crowley. Anybody else? Agree? Light leather? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so light leather is almost always a yellowy, orangey leather. And that's not going to clash with anything here. It is something that is pretty much is going to count as our fourth color. And what it works with, though, is it works with like doing brass or gold for the fixtures here on the weapons. Since a brass is a yellowy color, so we can go with kind of a yellowy leather, a golden colored leather. Almost all light leathers are going to be yellow toned, though. If you look at them, they're either a pale orange with a yellow slant, or they are yellow. We're gonna, if you say light leather, I mean, that means light. That means not just a faded leather. That's kind of a cop out unless you fade it a lot. And it's hard at 28 to really make that read right. Turgeon? And yeah, we can't go red, because if you go red, then you're immediately clashing with what we're going to do down here, which is red-orange, remember. Can't go too close on the color wheel. So with 28s, you have a lot less room for subtlety as far as fading stuff, especially on things like belts. You're more looking for blocks of color to set up the miniature to make all the details stand out. When you get to a big piece, then you can like do your leather and you can suggest fading and all that fun stuff, because you have all this room. And so you have a lot more room to convey that visual information. But faded leather at 28, unless you're working on a very large, broad area of leather, like if we were doing like a big chest piece of armor, like leather armor, we could do that because we'd have a lot of room to give visual information. But think about like what conveys fading. You usually have a little bit of like the original leather at least hinted at, and then you've got enough room to like kind of pull it out, gray it out, or yellow it out, or blend it out so that it's obvious that the leather has gotten older over time and it's starting to like, you know, just really fade or get rubbed raw at the edges. You have very little room on this model to do that. All you have is a belt. So I wouldn't recommend it. Thanks, Twistonoma. So does that make sense, Turgeon? Why you could do fading, and this is going to come back to the series that I'm doing on my Patreon right now for you guys. So anybody who's a patron, it's a $2 series, so it's at the, you know, all of you should get it. And if you are not a patron and you're interested in this, by all means come over. It's patreon.com/paintingbig and come on over and sign on at my lowest tier. I'm doing a series on how much texture you can really do at 28 millimeter. So we started out with scratches and dings and dents on metal, and then this coming month I'll do a different one, maybe cloth fading, and we'll essentially talk about textures and weathering, because those are the effects that you can do on 28, a surprising amount of, but not, there are areas that are smarter to do it on and areas that just aren't going to work nearly as well because of the scale that you're working at. Okay, good. Thanks for that, Quindy. Thank you for the link. Quindy has put my Patreon link. All right, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that series because it's like everybody wants to do textures. Like textures are the hot thing right now. Is like they're really catching on, and a lot of people want to do them on and really get their hand in. And because so many of us in the North American region come into this with 28 millimeter gaming miniatures, people are seeking to do that at 28, whereas it comes from larger miniatures originally. So I thought a series on this would be useful. But yeah, so on a little belt like this, there are some things you can do, and we'll actually, we'll play with them. Let me see. First of all, I think I'm going to get out the classic leather color for this color of leather, which is actually, go figure, leather brown. Yeah, well, stippling is where it's at, man. Turgeon, everybody, stippling is where it's at. That's why people love it. This Saturday, Twistoma. In fact, I just turned down going to a birthday party with David so I could start it this Saturday, because I said it was going to be this Saturday, and I wasn't going to go, oh, oops, a birthday party. I can't do it. This is the problem with me streaming on the weekend, and we'll see how long it lasts. But yeah, I think that once David learns we have to plan around it, I think we'll be okay. All right. Hello, D Sparrow. But yes, this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. USA Central on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig, we will be resurrecting a paint club. Everybody is welcome to sit and work on their work and ask questions as usual and chat. And I will be working on maybe something new. Thank you. There, we've gotten all my links and shout outs out of the way now. Let us talk about leather. So when leather is naturally tanned, it tends to go kind of this color, which is why we have leather brown. And then we also have tanned leather, which is the yellowy version that is also perfectly valid. You also can deepen and darken this with things like, I used to use chestnut gold. This is a color you'd see used in a lot of Western saddle leather, along with this, and also with a bit of ochre. You can use polished leather, since chestnut gold is canceled. Where's my polished leather? Polished leather is another great color for that deep kind of, saddle leather when you want that worn saddle that's been oiled and stuff. Then this is a great start, and we'll probably use a little bit of this kind of for shading and variation. So let's get this round up, and then I'm going to grab a paler, yellower color to highlight with. If I can get this to squeeze out. Apparently, it wants to fight today. Oh, and it wants to also not be very in solution. It's just giving me issues. What isn't polished leather? I recommend you all the time, and now you're acting up on stream. This is not smart. Not if you want people to buy you. But seriously, it has a very heavy yellow. It's got a load of yellow in there. And when you get the yellow base, sometimes it just wants to be shaken a little extra. Yeah, Lone Star leather is actually closer to rich leather, Dogfather. Lone Star leather is very close to this color. This is a slight variation. You can see the difference in color. And there is a difference here that's pretty key, which is that polished leather has no black in it and rich leather does have black in it. And that does change like how you can use it with mixing. But yes, you could use rich leather for another step down. But since we're wanting to keep this light so that it contrasts with his pants and his fur and everything. So I think normally to highlight this, I would use like tanned leather or amber gold, something like that. Since I don't have those immediately to hand, I think I'm going to use NMM Gold Highlight. Another color that's great, maybe I can grab, hold on. I think I have my blonde hair colors. That's actually a great Triad to use. Do I have them right to hand? I think I do. Blonde Highlight. Do I have blonde hair? Yeah, I do. Okay, so another great set to use for this sort of thing is actually the blonde hair Triad, guys. Blonde shadow, blonde hair, and blonde highlight are great ways to bring this up. And they're not as yellow as this, which when I looked at it, I was like, too yellow. So instead we'll use blonde hair to bring it up, which will work just great. It's almost the same color as amber gold, so it's actually a good choice. Uh-oh. There we go. So yeah, you can go really yellow with it when you're doing mixes, but if you're going to use just this as a highlight, I'm going to keep this around because I might want to add a drop. But so the Triad then that we've put together, let me put a few drops of this down here for this pale leather. It's going to be blonde hair, 9257. Now, our shadow and our midtone are a little bit closer than our midtone and our highlight. And remember, you can figure that out by using the grayscale on your color wheel, by kind of just bending the colored part out and kind of putting the gray over the edge of the color and kind of comparing how light or dark it is. So if we go to value 6 here, that's getting really close. Like you can see that 6 is maybe a tiny bit lighter. And then value 5, that's actually about perfect. So this color is a 5. And if you ever doubt it, go one farther, and if you see that the edge is definitely darker, as it is there, see it, how the edge is darker than the color, then you know that it's a 5. So then if we look at our color here, I bet we're going to be around, we're around a value 4. So it's really close, because this is too dark. Oh, sorry, there it is, too dark. You can see it's a 4. So this is a 4 and this is a 5. So those are very, very close. And then when we go up to our blonde hair here, it's going to be more like a value 8. So like 2 steps, maybe even, yeah, no, it's an 8. If you look, you can see that that edge is too dark and that edge is slightly lighter and that edge is perfect. So we've got an 8, 5, 4. So what that means is we need to bring this closer to that if we're going to get a nice triad that blends well. And that's fine, because that's why we're going to take a little bit of this and mix it into that. So triad construction on the fly using your color wheel's grayscale. Get a color wheel, folks. I actually think the grayscale is the most useful part of the color wheel, except maybe when you're trying to figure out color schemes, in which case the backside with the triads and the quadrads are very useful. Alrighty, so I'm going to get a drop of water in all of these. Another advantage of adding a little bit of this blonde hair color to the leather brown is that it will increase coverage. So we're going to go in reverse. We're going to mix that up. And we're going to just use our brush that we mixed it up with to mix this color. And then we're actually going to go and mix a little bit of that previous color into our last color as well. Now this is going very, very yellow at that point when it gets a little bit of this in there. So I may want to bring it down a tad. I could use rich leather. That's the next step down on our thing. Part of me wants to use russet brown. I'm going to do that. Any darker, yellowy or brown. Rich leather and russet are both good choices here. But that one a little bit too yellow. So I just squished out like half a drop. Yeah, that's a little better. I want a little more drama. Remember also with 28s, don't get too subtle. So that actually made a color that's really close to rich leather. And I'm going to do a reverse thing now, where I take a bit of that and mix it into this. These are still like not perfect for each other, so I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. I think that'll work. What we've got here is we've got a lot of white, and this one is just not wanting to fall into line. It's a bit too vibrant. It's not muted enough is really its problem. So I'm going to actually add in a little bit more russet brown. You want to have variation, but you can see this is way yellower than this, and so it's really kind of clashing right now because it's too, hey Turgeon, thanks, 6 months. So it's just a little bit too vibrant. Oops, a little bit of a bubble there. Which means that we need to drop it down a little bit. I may need to actually add a touch of black to it. That's getting a little better. But it's still a little yellow. And it's really, you can see how vibrant it is when I pull it across here. Like it's actually a very, it kind of smacks you in the face, whereas this is more washed out, right? So maybe we need to bring this up a little closer. That's getting a little better. I feel like just a touch. I'm going to try something really, really extreme. We were fine until I started mixing, but now we're going to have to pull it back together. This happens when you try to mess around and make up a new triad. Sometimes you're like, And you got to use your gut. Like, you got to follow your gut. If your shadow looks brighter than your midtone, that's a dangerous sign, guys. It means it's probably, unless you're using it to just intensify the color and not as a shadow, which actually we could do. Do I want to do that? I'm going to try one more shadow hit. I'm going to use black and brown. Just a tiny touch of it, because black and brown has black in it. That's going to hit it hard. Boom. It takes it right down. And it greens it out. And notice how it's really not, that's really not bright. But now, now they work, because I killed a little bit of that brightness. When you have a midtone that is not terribly bright, that is kind of washed out, do not use a very, very intense shadow. Think about dropping some black into it. Black is instantly going to mute any bright color you add it to, with almost no exceptions. There are a couple of exceptions. But with a brown like this where you're mixing it, it's going to take it down and take any vibrancy out of it. And sometimes, most of the time, I treat that as a minus, not a good thing. But in this case, we needed that. Which is why you can never, like, you know, say absolute things like black in a color is a bad thing. No, it just depends on what you're working with. All right, so now we have a triad that we're going to try to deal with and see how it works. So this is kind of a mixture of mostly leather brown with a little bit of polished leather and a little bit of our highlight color in it, and maybe even a little bit of russet brown from our previous mix. And I'm gonna, I may have thinned it just a little much, we'll see. Yes, happy Wednesday. Morning, Daffodware. Yeah, I feel like I need one more drop of leather brown. Leather's a great color, but it does not have the highest coverage in the world, so just a little bit more. That's good. But yeah, the only thing we don't have in MSP is a dark leather, and that's because there are colors that suit that essentially if I set out to make that triad, it would just be using existing colors like russet brown and blackened brown and walnut. I'm just going to paint this whole thing, you know. We can come back and deal with the buckle. Sometimes it's just like, it's not worth it. Don't try to paint like real fiddly and avoid areas and come back to them. Just paint the whole thing in one color. You can always go over the top. So that definitely is working just from the get-go. It is definitely a light color. It is showing up great against his fur. And because it's just kind of a neutral color, it's not going to draw the eye too much. And that's what you want. If you're going to use a light on this guy, you want something that isn't going to really distract the eye, which is why going with like a light bright red would have been a mistake. I think we went the correct way here. But yeah, for dark leather, I tend to use russet brown. I tend to highlight with harvest brown. I tend to shade it with blackened brown or walnut. And that is a great dark leather triad. But those colors are useful for any like dark brown surface. But I do use them a lot for leather. Let's get this little strap. And because we lined, this is also standing out pretty well. I'm going over some of the lining when I hit other areas down here. We'll just reintroduce it. So, did any of you see the beautiful bus that Chimera put up for pre-order yesterday? The kind of female samurai-ish kind of trio. David bought them for me for Christmas because I was in agony because they were so expensive, and I was like, my budget won't let me get them, but they're only limited. If you don't get them now, you're not going to get them. At least that was what the email said. So he was nice, and he decided that those would be... Yeah, Kundi. Yeah. So David decided that would be my Christmas present because he's the best man ever. Or at least he's like, you know, probably not the best man ever for everybody, but he's the best man ever for me. But, guys, this means I have to come up with a David Christmas present. Like, that's not a slacker present, so... And he has not been, like really interested in, like, usually... Certainly during 2020, when it was, like, pandemic and we were home all the time, we looked at a lot of Kickstarters, and there was a lot of stuff that I felt I could order for him kind of on the sly, and that would be his Christmas present. But lately, he's kind of been exercising my mindset where it's like, I have so much stuff to paint already. And for me, that means it has to be darn good for me to want to spend money on it, which I love those busts. They're like right up my alley. because the animals and then the different motifs and then it's female samurai types. And I'm just like, yeah, that's pretty much. If you go to Chimera, Pegaso Chimera's website, they probably will have a promo page, I would hope, because they're open for pre-order. They sent me an email, so because I'm unwisely on their email list. But yeah, so now I have to come up with something for David, and he is the guy who's hard to buy for. Like, he's like, well, like a lot of guys who like makes a good income. Like, if he wants something, he buys it. So you have to come up with something that he wants, but maybe has just forgotten about because it got off his radar for a moment. It's challenging. It's very challenging. Yeah, thanks, Quindy. It is spelled funny. I'm not sure, Crows. Maybe if Quindy maybe could find that out for you, who sculpted the Reaper Virtual Expo 75mm Scarlet. I thought it looked like a Gene sculpt, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a newer... Maybe it's somebody else. Alrighty, we're going to get this belt blocked in, and then we're going to start shading and highlighting it, and we'll see what we can do to bring out its character. Oh, all but one of the Chimera busts are sold out. Is the package sold out? Where you could order all three? I'm glad David ordered it last night then. If we had waited even a day, we would not have been in. This is why I hate it when companies do this. Like, I'm glad that Reaper is big enough not to have to stimulate sales like this. Like, I know it for the companies involved, like, it gets them a chunk of money, like, you know, instantaneously, and maybe, you know, that's cool for their, like, taxes and bottom line, but it always bothers me when it's a limited thing. You have to order it now. And then if you don't get it, or you haven't seen it, or you're not on their list, like, it's done. It's gone by the time you see it. Oh, okay. Well, geez. I'm gonna double check. Now I'm paranoid. And I'm like, David, did you order it? Oh, you got a confirmation on that Chimera order, right? Now I'm paranoid. I'm pretty sure he did. Quindy says they are sold out. I hope we did. There. I'm going to be paranoid at my fiance. Yeah. Yeah, they're gorgeous busts. Yeah, I know. Me too, Dogfather. I don't call it shame. It's just minis I haven't gotten to yet. Yeah, Chimera is tiny. Well, that's why they're kind of like teamed up with Pegaso, right? But they're such beautiful. I'm hoping that we got in on it in time last night. And it was only what? I think when he ordered it, it was only 8 hours after I got the email, so hopefully we're good. All right, so we've got a nice solid base coat, and it takes a couple of coats sometimes. I want to get a very solid base coat on this. So I have that nice rich color to work off of. Yeah, 3D printing is nice. Unfortunately, a lot of the best sculptors are still, like, a lot of the 3D sculptors are coming along, but they're still not quite to the level of some of these people doing pieces for the companies. Like these, there are some very good 3D sculpts out there, and they're getting better all the time because those people are like working at their craft all the time. But I feel like these busts are a step above. Could just be because they hit my, like, all of the things I like in a model. But I'm not tempted by very many 3D prints these days. But that one I totally wanted. 98% sure it's a gene sculpt. Yeah, I thought it was a gene sculpt. Yeah, exactly, Polly. You're correct. Kingdom Death. I could just sometimes, like, it's like, why do you not want my money, companies? Why do you not want my money? If only you made it available, you could get more money. Why would you not do that? It's so weird. So weird to me. I've never understood it. And, you know, except as a tactic for making a lot of money very quickly, which it does work at. It works. Yeah, exactly, Twisted Oma. That's exactly what I did. Like, when I saw the price, I was just like, ugh. Because I personally, you know, David and I keep separate finances. I actually kind of believe in that. It's just something that I personally like to do. Especially just where our incomes are so disparate. But maybe after we're married, we'll have a talk and see what we're going to do. But I think we're still going to keep our finances separate and just have a combined account for household expenses. So I am still a starving artist Anne who, like, I have a budget, a very tight budget for my own things. And that really, if he hadn't bought that, if he hadn't decided that would be my Christmas present, I would have had to pass on it because, yeah, pricey. It's the other nice thing about Reaper, right? They keep it affordable. So Reaper is never going to, like, tell you, if you don't order this right now, you're not going to get it. And they're not going to tell you, you know, like, we're going to charge you an arm and a leg for these. They try very hard to keep the hobby accessible, which is one of the things I've always liked about Reaper. And one of the reasons that I've always been proud of working for them is that because of Bones, you have an entry point to get into the hobby that is not going to completely break your bank. Which is so important. Yeah, that's a good point, Val. It's the recast thing, right? And that's, I can see that being a thing. But then you have to ask yourself, does the rarity of it contribute to that? I don't know. It's a hard question. But the recast thing is real. I know it. That's why I never buy from recasters. I don't want to fuel that market. It was when David and I were looking at Kingdom Death stuff that he told me to keep an eye on it. Because I don't want to support that sort of thing. Oh, says Jean Van Horn. Thank you, Thoramel. Yeah. Yeah, I thought she looked like a Jean sculpt. So now we're taking our liner and we're just going to come through here. It's brown liner, by the way. And I'm using it pretty strong. I'm getting pretty strong lines. And that's because I want these little details of the buckles and everything. I want those to stand out. And on 28mm is when you'll see me do a lot of dark lining. And especially keeping it very dark, not just making it kind of a shadow. But then you buy whole Kickstarters worth of them. Yes, Quantum. You're right. That's the downside, right? It's like they're cheap, so you can buy a bunch. I've gotten pretty good on my self-control in the Kickstarters. Because I've got so many beautiful models right now. Ooh, I wanted to share with you guys too. Like, we're after the halfway point now of National Novel Writing Month, and I have not only kept up the entire month, but I am ahead, which is an insane thing, and I've never been there before. Like, and I've done NaNoWriMo since 2007. I have never been this on it before. So I'm quite proud of myself for sticking to it. Although it definitely has added a little bit of stress. Just because the pressure, because you have to do almost 1,700 words a day to stay ahead on Nano. Which is a lot of writing. It's a lot of words. But I outlined this one a lot before I started writing. I think that's made the difference. Instead of just trying to kind of spin it off the top of my head. So we're getting that buckle. See how the lining makes that buckle stand out so much better. Yeah, it's a commitment, Polly. Like, it definitely is. I find that to do it, I need to schedule 2 writing blocks a day. And I actually started getting up early this year in order to schedule in a writing block before the stream. So I have a half-hour writing block before I come on, like right after breakfast. And that has helped a lot, like scheduling in those blocks of time. It's hard to schedule stuff when David's home, so I try to get all of the writing somehow fit in here or there. I have another chunk like right at the tail end of my lunch. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Kickstarters. You know, just because you epic failed doesn't mean that you're an epic fail, Pendrake. A lot of us try it, fail it, and then try it again and again. I mean, I've failed. I've only succeeded. I've done it since 2007. I've done it every single year. And I've done Camp Nano a number of times as well. And I've only won, I think, by winning, meaning hit the 50,000 mark in 30 days. I think 4 times out of all those years. So if you really would like to write, it is a good spur. And just because it didn't work for you once doesn't mean it can't work for you. So if you are ever still interested in it, I think it's fun. I joined my local Discord, my regional Discord this time too. It'll be better when there are in-person write-ins. A lot of people are still not doing in-person, and but yeah, I encourage anybody to do it if they're interested. It's interesting. It does definitely show you how hard writing can be. But yeah, it definitely is a time commitment, I find. And I type very fast, so I have somewhat of an advantage there as long as I have an idea of what kind of scene I'm writing going in. Because if I know kind of what I need to write about, and I have some ideas, then I can type very quickly. I used to work at a job that required you to be able to type over 65 words a minute. Accurately. So I can chug along pretty well. I don't know what my time is now. I should probably try it. Probably try to time myself and see if I'm over. I think my highest was around 80 words per minute. But there were people at that job that could do over 120 or 100, even 140, I want to say, at the highest end. Which is insane. Oh, that's cool. Short stories are good. I practice short stories to get better at novels. Short stories are really good to make you like condense your ideas in your writing. Like learn how to write tight instead of slathering words all over the page, which is what I tend to do, at least in a rough draft. All right, so we've got to line. We've got these fingers lined. I kind of pre-lined around the weapon already. Put kind of a deep shadow there. All right, so do I have all my lining now? I think all our leather is nicely lined. We have to make a decision about this pouch. I'm going to leave that pouch for now, I think. I may want to make the pouch the red of the sash, or because it's close to the red of the sash, I may want to go just a dark leather with it or a black. I may go black with a blue hint to it because that's what I did on his muzzle. So I may go that route just to make it kind of, and maybe we'll put little stripes on it. That'll be fun. That could be fun. Or a little like diamond pattern or something. We could do that. Maybe we have enough room for a tiny bit. For Nano, it's raw. You got to put out 50,000 words, and they don't care if it's quality, which is the way to do it. I mean, the hardest part of writing is writing that rough draft and not over editing yourself. Because if you stop to edit, you're just going to stop writing, and you're never going to finish. So you have to get out the crappy first draft, and then you can make it good. Editing and revision is how you make it into a good book. I don't want to even tell you how many times I revised my first novel. Like the first chapter alone, I'll tell you, was 25 times. I used to keep an iteration count on them. Every time I'd edit it, I'd add a number, or I'd update the number at the end of the chapter title. Oh, word per minute speeds. That's raw. That's raw. You're supposed to pretty much, when we were doing it, I worked for Relay, for the hearing and speech impaired. So we would be typing along with what somebody was saying. And you were supposed to get it. If you could correct it fast, you were allowed to. Like if you were super fast to correct. Otherwise, you just had to go with it and try to, like usually they'd say, don't try to fix the word, just type it like accurately right afterwards and everybody will figure it out. But yeah, people were insanely accurate. You just got really accurate and really fast with that job. I really enjoyed that job because working with the deaf community was really cool. And I learned a little bit of sign language, which I've pretty much forgotten at this point. And we went to a deaf poetry reading. It was cool. It was just a really cool job. And you're helping the deaf community and the hard of hearing. And so it was a really cool, it was nonprofit. Yeah, I wonder what my words per minute now are. All right, so we're good. Now time to shade. We're going to shade. We already put on one level of shading, which is, of course, the lining. That's the darkest shadow. But now we're going to go in with this color we mixed out of russet brown and leather brown and polished leather and a little bit of blackened brown. And we're going to start adding in some shadows, building up some shadows. We want to keep our leather light, though, remember. So we don't want to do too much. But this color also is reading really flat and cartoony right now. So we do need to add some depth. So I'm going to just paint in some darker areas, wherever there are divots, like here. But yeah, I think 100, I want to say the fastest person at Relay was a guy who could do almost 140 accurately. Really, really, really accurately. When they assessed you, they'd make you type, and then there was a deduction for the amount of errors you had that would even out your overall score. So we were encouraged to improve. So I think it gave me an overall advantage when I'm doing NaNoWriMo then, where I have to really book it And it's another instance where you're not supposed to stop to correct. So adding that shadow in there is nice. It's still kept the belt looking light, but now we've got some richness to it. We've got a bit of a shadow there. But yeah, once Nano is over, I want to finish the book. Like 50,000 words won't finish my novel. It'll probably be more around like 75, 85, I think, by the time it's done. I'm going to keep this, get that shadow in there because there's kind of a bump there where the little tongue of the buckle comes out. So I'm going to shade that area. Sometimes, as long as it doesn't get too dark, sometimes putting kind of a shadow over a lot of the area works. Because you can bring it back up because you're working with really light paint. So here I'm kind of doing kind of a shadow right under the top edge. I'm doing another one here under that band. Kind of keeping my shadow, because a belt like this is probably gonna like kind of curl as it wraps around the body. You're gonna see the edges curl a bit and the center sink. It's usually how it tends to wear. Yeah, that makes sense. Too similar to 0 and 1. That's interesting. Yeah, I just use numbers because I was like version, like V1, V2. I got up to 25. I think I stopped officially counting like around 19 or 21, but then I know I did at least 4 iterations after that, so pretty insane. The whole novel got... The first chapter is, and apparently this is common for the first chapter to need more revision or take more revision than other parts of your book, because the first chapter is just so darn important and it has to do so much work. But the rest of the book, I'm guessing about 15 revisions. My hope in outlining this new book is that it will not take nearly as many revisions, but we'll find out. All right, so see that shadow, just bringing that little bit of shadow in up there. It's not changing the color a lot, but it is like darkening it down a little bit. And I don't want this to get too dark next to the fur, but I also have highlights that I'm going to bring into this, and so I'm not real worried about that. Yeah, exactly. And it has to establish the world and the first character at least, and the theme. Because, yeah, it's got to do those active things and grab the reader, but then the subtext is all, you know, you're setting up your character and what's wrong with where they are. You know, the reason that the book has to happen, right, is that something is always wrong. If you don't have a problem, you don't have a story. And so you have to kind of at least suggest the problem, even if the big problem comes later. There's an excellent agent who has a book out. I don't remember if it's writing the blockbuster novel by Albert Zuckerman. I tried to read it once. It was too dry. I went back to it, and it's actually pretty brilliant in some ways. But he dissects Gone with the Wind, among other classics. And he points out that even though the main trouble of the book is when the Civil War kicks off, the writer still gives you early trouble, like little trouble, to keep you reading and interested. Like the trouble with the character, you know, like. So yeah, there has to be trouble in that first chapter somewhere. And young adult books tend to have trouble earlier because attention span. Like if you can kick off your trouble super early, that's awesome. All right, so we've got kind of that groove. I want to suggest that shadow. See how much richer and more three-dimensional just a shadow can help. Look at how flat this belt looks here and how much nicer it's looking here. Yeah, the trouble with tribbles. Yeah, that makes sense. Pendrake. I don't need anything so elaborate yet. But yeah, so you can see the way that that shadow just adds a bit of three-dimensionality, whereas here the belt is still very, very flat. So let's deal with that lower belt and bring it more in line with the upper belt. How much for just the planet? Yep. I'm going to actually thin down my shadow a little bit. It's gotten a little gooky. Alrighty, so just a little bit of shadow again, more toward the middle. If there's an edge that looks like it's sticking out more, which in this case I'd say is the bottom one, I'm going to leave that with the base coat and I'm going to shade the rest of it. So also there's an overhang here where his chest is bending over, so that's another reason I would leave a highlight on the bottom edge there. I'm sure the system worked if it was a complex complex issue with marking pieces of stuff and iterations. There we go. So over on the crest of his back here, I'm probably going to leave no shadow on that area where his spine is coming down. There's kind of a peak there, and then kind of a stretched area here. I'm going to put a little bit more shadow in this area. You can see the shadow is, even though it looks much darker on the palette than this color, because I've thinned it down, it's not really, it's not showing up. It's actually blending in very well, these shadow areas. And if it ever isn't, I can bring in my midtone again and kind of blend that edge. Or I can do a little bit of wet blending if I grab both colors. I can put in the one and then grab a little bit of the other one and blend it over the top to get a better transition. And now it looks much softer and you can't see that hard edge anymore. Alrighty. So let's go to our highlights. Now, the highlights are where you can start to introduce some texture. Usually, in my experience, you don't add a lot of texture with shadow. But the highlights are where you can pick out bits here and there. So we'll probably stipple around the edge of this belt. And I've got just a little bit of paint on my brush. And you can go fast and furious with your stippling, or you can make it smaller. This is also the time to assess whether our paint is maybe a little bit too pale compared to the rest of this. I think it's about right, but I'm going to thin it a little bit. If your paint seems too light when you put it on for a highlight, you have two options. You can mix in a little bit of your midtone, or you can keep it this way and you can thin it. Either way is going to impact the color. So putting that stippling line on top there, that looks pretty, that's pretty stark. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to thin this color for when I do the bottom, and I'm going to see if it's quite as stark as it was up there, and if it's not, yeah, then I'm good. That's a little better. So yeah, so you've always got those two options. You can decide to change the overall color, or you can thin it. And I tend to thin it. And the reason that I would just tend to thin this instead of just adding some of this into it to make it closer is that this gives me more flexibility. Now, if I want a lighter highlight, I just layer up 2 coats of this instead of having to mix this color again in its pure form. So it saves you a bit of work. I mean, you're still going to be putting 2 coats on, but you would have had to do that anyway if you wanted to get up to a certain level of highlight. So I'm going to punch the edge close to this buckle. Hit both ends of that little strap there. If there's cracking on a belt like this, it will be at the edges, so that's kind of why I'm stippling it and lightening it. Because if the underlying leather is going to show up through the sweat and oil and dirt and grime and whatever else he's gotten on his belt, it's going to show up when the leather cracks at the edges. So that's why we're doing it this way. There's method to our madness. And here I want to get a little bit of highlight right around that tongue of that buckle, which will help it to stand out when we do the colors. And then right here under the neck, we're probably not going to get much, so I'm just going to suggest a little bit of highlight. And then when we get up here, we're going to do a lot. So let's get up to the top of that shoulder. I am going to actually do a 50-50 mix here between my midtone and my highlight color, just to kind of block in the top of the shoulder here, which is going to get a lot lighter because it is in the light. And I'm going to do kind of a sideways stroke here. So dashes to kind of suggest that that is worn. Going to eat up a lot of the shadow that I put down, but not all of it. We just want this area to look lighter and introduce a little bit of texture. There. And we haven't shaded. Well, I feel like we need a little more shading there, but we'll get to it. All right. Now we can take our... We're going to highlight this edge just a little bit more. All right, there we go. Now we take our pure blonde hair color, this one, that I thinned down, and we're going to put a layer of that up on the edge up top here on the Gnoll strap. Now the stippling that I'm doing now is going to be a smaller area than I did when I came in with the last highlight. So much lighter. Yeah, looks really worn up there. That's good. Once again, we're going to highlight here. We're going to kind of highlight around the little tongue of that buckle as well to bring out those details. You can also highlight a little bit under each of these little punch holes in the belt if you want those holes to stand out. We can do that up here too. We'll come back and do it. Because there would be a bit of a divot in the leather from the punch going through, so you can accentuate that. Hey, Camel Rage. Unable to sleep because, yeah, because your vacation. Set your internal clock to entirely the wrong time. Well, hell, welcome. It's nice to see you. There we go. So we're doing leather today, Camel. Light leather to make it stand out better, which is, I don't do light leather often, but it makes sense to do it on this Gnoll to make it stand out. This Gnoll is going to be super fast, I think, relatively speaking. He is pretty simple. It's nice because he's let us talk about some different stuff. I do need to overpaint that paw. Once we go back to the fur, I'll overpaint the green paw. Alrighty, let's see here. I need to redo that line because I just wiped it out with a highlight. There. Better. Okay, so that's good. That's good. I need to do the patch under there that's holding all the pieces together, and I need to do highlights on the back. And I may actually put in those lines on the pants. Just to drive the pants darker, because I feel like that's going to fix the pants right now. Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to do the leather real quick, and then we're going to do that. Let's see. I think I want to get a little closer too. You get in focus. There we are. Much better. Alrighty. I'm going to do, again, kind of a 50-50 mix just on the side of my palette with this highlight and midtone, just for starters. And I'm not really stippling. I'm kind of stippling, but I'm putting a little tiny dash in on these. Maybe you guys can see. And the reason is, like I said, with weathering on long strips of leather, they tend to curl and crack. They tend to crack across the body of the leather. So that's why I'm doing like tiny dashes. For very thin belts, like on the front here, the belt's a little bit like has sections that are thinner. So I'm doing more of a dot. But here, this belt is a little more broad and I can actually do dashes. Oh, I see. Alrighty. Well, it could have been either, to be fair. I'm sad that the vaccine is keeping you up, but I'm happy that you're here, so it's all good. Now, one other place that we could lighten this up a bit is where it bulges out over the top of his, or over the mound of his back here, where his like mane is. We could lighten that up a little bit to give our leather more variation there, and to reflect the fact that it's kind of like rounding the hump of his rib cage here. So we can lighten it just a little bit through this section. I'm still using the same brush stroke to kind of suggest some strain on the leather there. There. It looks like there's kind of a slash in the leather here. So I'm going to actually put that in with a little bit of dark. There's kind of a hole and a nick like he got cut. And actually it's kind of a little scarness back there too. So I'm going to assume that that is meant to be there. And I'm going to suggest that this is a slash in the leather by putting that line in. Stretching out my shoulders today. Let's see here. I want to highlight the bottom edge of that to make it look like it's 3D. There we go. Now it looks like there's actually a gash in the leather that almost cut his sword belt or his belt off. That would have been awkward, as it is like holding his little pouch on. Though I think his pants would be safe because he's got a sash to hold his pants up. So I think he's okay. All right, more highlights. Yeah. This blocky, big, thick chunk of leather probably will just get some. There's a couple of like sideways dashes that suggest some strain across it in the sculpt. So we'll put those in. And a little bit under the arm here as well, but because the arm is casting a shadow, you won't see as much light down here. So I'm not going to put as bright of a highlight there. I'm going to concentrate more here where the light is definitely hitting it. So we're halfway through the week, guys. We are rushing toward Thanksgiving. Speaking of which, Quindy, I assume there is no streaming on Thanksgiving Day, because we're all going to be cooking. But that we are also streaming on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Am I correct there? Oh, cool, Camel Rage. I'm really glad to have been that useful to you. I do try to be educational. There we go. Yeah, that'd be great if we could find out, just so I have time to set my schedule. I always like to know in advance. David and I are staying in town, so I don't think I need Friday off. It's usually an optional day for Reaper, but it would be good to know, because if John or Justin are going out of town, maybe I will take Friday. But yeah, cool. Thanks, Quindy. Thanksgiving weekend is a notorious, time to catch up on your NaNoWriMo novel day weekend. So here for this little bit of peak where it's going over the spine, his spine. It gets a little lumpy. I'm going to emphasize more of the light. Well, some of us like to have a day off every once in a while. But yeah, you probably will. Streams will probably be back on Friday, I would imagine, Val, unless a lot of people are out of town. If a lot of people are out of town, then maybe not Friday, but we'll see. We won't have family here for Thanksgiving, but we will for Christmas. So Christmas I may have to take. Well, actually, Christmas I'm going to be taking a lot of time off because I have both sets of family obligations over the week after Christmas. Which means I should probably drop John and Justin a note to that effect on scheduling. Do we have issues? My OBS is saying we're fine on my end as far as frames. Yeah, we're gonna do chicken because it's just David and me. I love roast chicken, so I'll still do stuffing and green bean casserole, and we'll probably have pie. We'll have way too much food, just like everybody's Thanksgiving. There. That maybe got a little light. Hanukkah. Oh, that's terrible. Terrible. Okay, so this got a little light, so I'm actually going to glaze over it with my shadow color. Bring a little bit of depth back into it. There we go. More in line. If one area gets a little light with this particular combo, I would glaze with the shadow, because the shadow, even though I did take it down a bit, it still is pretty warm and rich brown. So it's a good tactic to take down that whole area and bring that belt back into line with the rest of the surface. Alrighty, I think we're good on that. Let's do some stripy pants. Stripy pants. Yeah, turkey is difficult. I mean, I love roasting birds, and mostly I do pretty well at it, but it's always challenging with turkey to, now smoking's different, so it'll be interesting to see how you get that one, Dogfather. You're pretty pro at the smoker, though, aren't you? Well, sweet potatoes and, you know, I do green bean casserole, which is vegan, the way I make it, because you can use, you don't have to use milk in it. Let's see, I'm going to get some black mixed up here. Yeah, so if anybody can get a good smoked turkey out of there that's not dry, it'll be you, Dogfather. Yeah, Alton Brown is the pro. Huh, interesting. Miller, I'm sorry that you've had challenges lately. Oh, wow. 8 people. And turkey pot pie. Tasty. Yeah, I love leftovers. But we just decided, like, last time, we couldn't eat all the turkey leftovers before they went bad. Like, I ended up shoveling it into Kiri. Like, our dog. She got a lot of turkey last year. Yeah, that makes more sense. And also so you don't get uneven cooking, right, Necro? All right, I mixed up some black. I did thin it. It's going to be about, this one's about a 5-to-1. I'm going to start with the stripe down more or less the middle of the pants or on either side, depending. If I kind of decide I want to keep this highlight here, then I'm going to put a stripe right next to it. But you start with one stripe. And you start pretty thin with your stripe. So just kind of figure out where it starts. And draw it down the top of the leg. Straight down, just like that. And keep it going right down to the bottom. And then we decide if we want to widen it out to either side. Or you can decide, well, I like this highlight here, so I'm actually going to darken it out to the other side. Usually when you see stripy pants on a pirate, the stripes are pretty broad, relatively speaking. So you don't have to do very many, which is the advantage of that. So I'm going to use the initial stripe as my right edge. And I'm just going to fill the stripe out going left. Yeah, I love green bean casserole because I make the cream of mushroom soup component homemade from scratch. The best cream of mushroom soup ever. So I love that, and that makes the casserole. Like having a homemade cream of mushroom soup recipe that rocks essentially like makes green bean casserole a force to be reckoned with. All right, so then once you've got the thickness of this stripe, you need to leave enough indigo that's about the same thickness. You want your stripes of both colors to be about the same width. So once we have this set, we more or less do now, we kind of say, okay, that space, and I'll kind of move my brush over and I'll say right about here. That leaves me about the same width. And then I'll just kind of go up and down here. And you just need to do little dashes. You don't need to draw a straight line. Just kind of go a little bit at a time, keeping the width of this indigo stripe more or less the width of this black stripe, sorry. And you don't worry, you can always fix it. So you have our stripe, and we have our second stripe is developing. Yeah, it's so much better that way. I find that frozen green beans actually I like a little bit better than fresh. I'm annoyed dealing with fresh green beans, but the frozen work okay. Canned, I will admit, is too brown. Doesn't affect the taste so much, but yeah, I use frozen. I use a lot of frozen stuff like that. All right, so we've got our second stripe. Nice. Yeah, I have, there was a Reaper employee who like would only eat, like one of the only vegetables he would eat would be canned green beans. I was just like, I never got it. I never understood. Green beans are not my favorite vegetable to start with, so I am picky. Green bean casserole is one of the ways that I like them. Oh, I always have leftovers. It means I don't have to cook. I make a lot of stuff that will give us at least one day of leftovers. Like I made, on Monday I made Indian curry, fish curry. And we are having the leftovers tonight. So I don't have to cook. Yay! Win! You like canned green beans, Quindy? That's all right. You have, there's more than one of you in the world. You're good. As long as you're eating vegetables, your system is better off than if you were not eating vegetables. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense, Necro. Yeah, I find the real kind a little bit off-putting if the texture is too grainy. So I understand that. Though we usually don't do mashed potatoes because we've got so many other foods. All right, so we've got a good start on our stripey pants, and I'm liking the black here. I'm liking the black, actually. It's understated and kind of cool. Fresh vegetables repel goblins. This would not surprise me. Does that mean that if you want a goblin repellent, you just need to plant a big garden? It's like the opposite of having a rabbit problem. Oh yeah. If you put stuff in, I mean, I did try the green bean salad with canned green beans, and the flavor was fine. They were just a little bit, like, they weren't as green as I was used to. But yeah, especially if you're adding garlic, parmesan, and bacon, that makes almost everything better. Stripey pants, guys. Stripey pants. And now we've got a seam up the middle. So we know that we can have the pattern differ and break off a little bit there. So we're going to put this stripe down this side. And your initial stripe is never perfect. It's just the stripe that then you adjust to make it better. There. So one leg, and then we'll go back here and do the back. Yeah, that's lucky, Twisted Oma. My grandma canned all of her own vegetables too, and she grew it in her big garden. There he is. Yeah, I could see that, Gwendy. See, for me, in the green bean casserole, the frozen, that grassiness of the frozen beans gets totally overwhelmed by the, like, awesome, rich mushroom soup, so I deal with it. But yeah, that's why green beans aren't my favorite vegetable. Since we got the air fryer, the Brussels sprouts are to die for. It's probably, like, I don't even do, I know most people, like, do fried foods and breaded foods, you know, frozen foods and stuff like that in the air fryer, but I'm just like, Brussels sprouts, please. They, like, do them restaurant perfection level. David is, like, addicted. All right, so stripe there. You could totally get, like, your wavy stripey pants vibe on here. Totally. There we are. Excellent. And a stripey stripe here. There. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. So I'm going to put a stripey stripe here. Because the stripes do not have to line up from side to side because of the seam. So we can just do whatever we like. So I'm just going to put a stripe where it makes sense to me, and then I'm going to put another stripe and carry it around. So wherever you start, that's where you go out from. So I started with the inside of the leg there, so I'm going to have to carry it around. Yes, fried cheese curds. It's a Wisconsin county fair tradition. There are entire booths at my old county fair devoted to the art of fried cheese curd. Especially beer battered fried cheese curds, because Wisconsin. Yeah, I love Brussels sprouts too. Alrighty. Especially done in the air fryer with red onions and sometimes some pancetta. Alright, let's see here. So we're going to come up here. And then I have to decide what angle. It's going to follow the angle of the leg. So I think it's going to go up along this fold. And we'll widen that out. We've almost got all of our stripes put in. And then we've got another stripey stripe. It's one of, oh, you're right. Culvers. No, I don't know. My family is very Wisconsinite and they love Culvers and they are not ashamed to order cheese curds. Although usually when we go, it's about the ice cream. I went there with my mom and my nephew when I was home over the summer. We went to Culver's and got ice cream. Pretty much my nephew will go anywhere with us, even though it's hanging out with two old ladies. He doesn't care because, like, we go to awesome places with great food. So he's like, I'll come with, and he'll get a sundae for it. We're sure to, we love the bribery. We're just like, we can spend time with our nephew as long as we feed him ice cream or fried Oreos or snow cones or something. That's true. Brussels sprouts are baby cabbages. All right. Well, one last stripe here. I went a little farther. That's all right. Nobody will notice. I just announced it on, like, Twitch, but no one will notice that I blurfed there. Actually, I can grab some water and come in and erase it. Probably the best option. There. Much better. Now I can redo that stripe. Gotta let that surface dry, though, before I do that. Yeah, I do like cabbage. It depends. I like kimchi. Lately, I'm on a kimchi kick. This thing does not want to dry. You can see the wet. I will have to wait. But anyway, that's our last stripe. So we did succeed in getting the stripy pants striped in. I like the stripy pants, actually. We succeeded in getting the stripy pants striped in so that we can highlight our black next time. And then we can also add the weathering and fade out the bottoms of the pants. And then I'll probably go back to the fur for a day to correct this leg and highlight all the rest of the fur. There we go. Now we're dry. I like bitterness. Actually, both David and I like bitter for vegetables anyway. Actually, I have a slightly higher tolerance, I think, for bitter than he does. Because I also like arugula, and he is not a fan. He wants his salads more sweet. There we go. We touched up our stripe. We have a stripy pants Gnoll. Ta-da! Stripy pants Gnoll. And our leather's done. And it looks great and it stands out. Yeah, Necro, that's pretty much how we roll. We often talk food. We often talk like creativity and inspiration and motivation. Like we often talk writing just because I mentioned NaNoWriMo a lot because I'm doing National Novel Writing Month. And we talk a crap ton of painting techniques. So that is actually the point of the stream, is all of the painting techniques. Everything else is just bonus material. But yeah, so there we are, and it is actually time to end the stream. So what we did today, we talked about choosing colors for the leather, why we would go with a lighter leather. We created kind of a new leather triad out of using leather brown and blonde hair for the highlight there, with these two mixed together a little bit here and there. And then this one is leather brown, leather brown, polished leather, and then mostly russet brown with just a tiny bit of black and brown to really darken it down. So that's kind of a mishmash of a lot of different browns, although mostly it's polished leather with just a little bit of those additional colors in it. And the leather has come up very nicely. We talked about weathering the leather and making it look a little bit more beat up. We talked about just highlighting and stippling in general and lining, and then we finally did freehand stripes and showed you guys how to mark those out and make it pretty stress-free. And yeah, welcome all the people who were like, hey, I haven't been able to catch this live before, and I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, Necro. We do this every weekday. Come back, hang out. But yeah, I think the Gnoll is looking really good, actually. We just need to correct that ultra green paw, and he'll be coming along really well. And we have the added advantage of, since we went a little bit lighter with this and a little bit oranger, like our fur is looking greenish, but not too greenish. Yeah, I'm liking him so far. Now, the danger with adding red, although we already kind of went there with the pink, the danger with adding an orange red is that it's going to make the fur look even greener. So at the end, we'll decide if we need to glaze our Gnoll and make him more brown and less green. But until we get to that point, I'm just going to leave him like this. So yes. Yeah, the highlighting of the stripes will be next time, I think. No guarantees, depends on what I feel like, but it'll bug me that part of the pants is highlighted and part of the pants aren't. So yes, I imagine we'll do that. Thank you everybody for coming and tuning in. I hope you had a great day, and we will be back tomorrow to celebrate Thursday on Reaper Pro Tips. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.